Welcome to Pathways to Stillness. I'm Dr. Gary Irwin-Kenyon, a gerontologist and Tai Chi instructor. On this show, my co-host Vicki Hogarth and I explore how the practice of stillness can transform the way we see aging, death, and loss, and how it can help us understand our lives as a story.
It's a treat to be with you here again, Gary, for our fourth episode of the show. Can you believe it? It's going by quite rapidly.
It is.
And we're still on the topic of aging today. The theme of today's show is the journey of aging is about changes on all levels. But before we jump into today's theme, we did an exercise on last week's show, and I have responses from viewers at home, but I'd love for you to read the exercise you gave to viewers last week.
Okay, we can do that. So, can you think of an example in your life where you went beyond, or could go beyond, outer time aging and its expectations and limitations to your inner aging, and find, or you have found, meaning and perhaps some stillness through making that movement?
We've got a lot of great responses from viewers at home. I'm going to read some of them now. They come in through email, and the email to the show is stillness@CHCO.TV. So if anyone wants to send in responses via email, that's how. And some come through Facebook. I post the question on my personal page as well to get some responses. So we've got a really array of responses that are quite illuminating. Kathy, she's from Deer Island, she wrote, I'm almost 47 and I have MS and I'm a frontman for a rock band and I run 5Ks. Previously, I had not sung in public since my 20s or ran in decades. Age is absolutely a number, she says. Mm-hmm. And we had a similar one from Al, who said he started playing guitar 4 years ago and has developed a deep passion for it. He also works out like a fiend at the gym, and he says no one who talks to him sees a 64-year-old man. So two kind of similar of taking on creative endeavors later in life. Right. And then there were academic goals too. Remy said, I've totally ignored age, and at 52, I'm aiming to attend university and achieve my potential and earn a degree regardless of age and expectations. Teresa, she actually is talking about her sister. She said, my sister is 81, she's blind. She walks to the gym every day and walks home with her white cane in hand. She keeps an immaculate home, cooks and looks after everyone. She is my hero. I love her courage and determination. Mm-hmm. Rihanna says she had her first child at 41 and she's the light of her life. Irma says at 81 she is wearing the clothes she wore in her 50s. So I love that, Irma. I hope I continue to do the same. June from Graminan said she's always had friends of different ages and she believes that helps. And that's kind of small town life. We really are intergenerational, and I find that makes a difference in my life too. Mm-hmm. So really great responses from the public. There were more. There were just a few I chose to read to kick off the show. What did you think? Well,
they're very inspiring, and it points to the creativity that we can have in our lives if we look at aging and then explore. And we'll talk more about viewing our life as a story in more detail. But they're just wonderful, and I really appreciate the response from the audience that can inspire those of us who are listening to this too.
We've talked about these answers especially show a really beautiful side of approaching aging differently than I think sometimes we think we're supposed to approach it, and how that can bring joy. But today's show, we're talking about all the changes of aging. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about why you wanted that to be the theme today.
I think to give an overview of generally different ways we can look at our lives and our aging. So it's about changes, right? Life is about changes. That, as they say, that's one thing you can't do much about. They come about sometimes. These days it seems like a lot of changes are coming, big changes, and very quickly. And it can be very overwhelming for many of us, and for all of us, I guess, to some degree or another. So those changes can be seen in different ways, and just wanted to give a little background to that. On the one hand, we have a doing brain or a doing mind, and that is basically our animal heritage, that part of our evolution. And it's based on fight, flight, or freeze. And so our culture tends to emphasize doing things. If something happens, we need to find a way to fix it, throw enough money at it, go talk to somebody with a PhD and get some answers. We tend to think that we'll be able to fix our problems or control, the big issue of control. However, first of all, good changes that we take as good, we don't have a problem with, right? Bring them on, whether it's love or a job or something that you really want or desire, and it comes, then that's great. So we're not talking so much about that, although examples of people who have found that are great too. But for most of us, there are a lot of other kinds of changes too, in like kind of the big three of health, finances, and relationships. There's a fourth one we sometimes talk about, your spiritual life, changes in that. But the first three, we tend to have changes that occur that we take as not being so pleasant. And we run up against this barrier that we can't seem to be able to fix. So we get burned out, we get stressed, we get illness, so much stress now. So what can we do about that? So it moves us possibly in another direction, which is the direction of being. And being, science says these days, neuroscience, that we have a prefrontal cortex, and that prefrontal cortex is a human part of our evolution, so it's newer. And for a lot of us, we're not even aware that that's there. I mean, I wasn't even till a few years ago. I didn't really understand it. And we repeat some things on this show because I think most of us don't get it the first time around. I didn't, for sure. So our being is about kindness, compassion for ourselves and others, being willing to approach something rather than avoid it and get away out of fear. So it's more about compassion, as I say, kindness, and approaching an issue. So we have the potential to respond to these changes from a different point of view. You could even say from a different story. We have the doing story and the being story. So the being story allows us to, if the trick is with the being, is we need to develop some sort of practice. Now these folks who have written in have discovered one way or another, have come to be able to see and be aware and be conscious of these things. Many of us are not really conscious of it. We need some kind of, I would say, stillness practice, whether that's a simple, basic, formal practice like meditation or Tai Chi or yoga or something, or more creative approaches through looking at your life as a story. So that's how we are able to, it takes some practice to be willing. You really need to be willing. And I guess on another point about that is many of us come to that point not through nice experiences, it's through suffering. So that's kind of odd. Would we design a world where we actually had to suffer to feel better? I don't think so. Most of us would say later for that. However, that's what we've been given. So we can either despair, especially with age changes, and the famous lifespan psychologist Erik Erikson talked about this really nicely, from being younger to being an older person. And being older, he talked about either despairing or developing integrity or wisdom. So it's a bit complicated from the point of view that that's not a natural development, right? Some of us, like one of my mentors, Jim Beeren, used to say, some people, no matter how long they live, they don't get wise. They stick with their old story and they keep banging up against the wall and they don't change. but there's a potential for that. Sometimes we suffer, and many times do discover meaning through that suffering or loss, whether it's physical suffering or financial losses. You know, through the pandemic and through the last big recession, you had suicide rates go up, right? People they just can't take it anymore, and they don't have anywhere to go with what they're feeling. So those changes can be, you can either, it's a bit subtle, because I think sometimes, I know for myself when I've had some really difficult times, I didn't wish that. I didn't wish that was going to happen. But after I got over the worst part of it, well, I felt better. I was more sensitive to other people's suffering. My practices felt better. Met new people. So these things are very possible. And once you get some awareness of it, or you listen to what we're saying and say, well, maybe I'll try this, then it's possible to develop consciously, to practice in that direction. And as I say, the most simple thing for stillness, not simple but not easy, is to try to slow down, sit down for 2 minutes even. And no matter what you're thinking, just sit there. And kind of, I would like to talk more about meditation and those kinds of arts in another episode, but the basic idea is to find some sort of practice that calms you down enough to be able to not be completely overwhelmed. So I do some work with people who work in healthcare, and for them, they're up against this impossible situations a lot of times. The stress levels and burnout are sky high. And so I try to invite them to just try 2 minutes of what we're doing in the show too, a little Tai Chi movement. Just try that for 2 minutes in your day. At first you have to make space for it. You have to say, I don't have time for this, I used to work in a bank years and years ago, and the bank managers were invited to a stress workshop. And this one guy said it all. He said, I don't have time for a GD stress workshop. There you are. So it's somehow to say, okay, I'll steal a couple of minutes for myself, just for me. And once you do that, you kind of crack open this shell, and then it will start to help you. Like I say about stillness, a lot of it is about showing up. It's already there. It's already permeates the whole universe if you follow some of these traditions. It's already there. You just need to slow down to let it come to you.
How do you reconcile those changes that you have control over and the changes you don't? How do you get to a place where you can be comfortable accepting the changes beyond influence and the ones that you do have influence over?
Well, that's a big issue and a complicated one too, because some are a matter of saying, well, I have this, let's say I have a physical condition, well, I have to go to the doctor, I have to go to a physio, and perhaps I might have to do something, exercises, or educate myself about whatever's happening, find out from other people, support groups, whatever it happens to be, depending on the issue. So there's all of that you can do, but there are other things that you get a diagnosis of something and you say, well, it doesn't look like I can do, I need to be more still. I need to accept and have my stillness practice, this is where it gets kind of not contradictory, but paradoxical. In stillness practice, you're still doing something, but it's not doing. That's why when you read these spiritual traditions like Taoism or Buddhism, they talk about non-doing. It's showing up for something and breathing or being with it. That's not the same as going out trying to fix or control something. So that's a form of energy, the same as going out is. It's a more, in Taoist terms, it's yielding, giving in, allowing, more of a female kind of energy than a stereotypical male form of energy. So if you can, so that's what you make a transition to, or can make a transition to, when you've exhausted, you've lost your job. Well, there's, I could imagine it might be two things. First, you go out and do everything you can, do a new CV, get online, see what's out there, see what's available given the parameters of your own situation. Okay, that's not happening for a while. So then you can get into the stillness mode and say, well, maybe I'll just be with this. Maybe I'll explore something like some of these folks did, something different. Well, I don't know. I remember earlier on in my life, I was out of a job, and there were some volunteer things that came up. So I decided to help out with, this was in Quebec during the day when they needed English, people to translate English, French to English. So I volunteered this stuff, and it turns out after a while, I applied for a job, and they said, I said, well, I have a degree, I have a bachelor's degree or whatever. They said, yeah, well, that's okay, but this volunteer work you did, this is very interesting. Right. And I got the job based on the volunteer work instead of, so it's coming to the point where if you can, you keep your eyes open from a doing perspective, but you're also being versatile or open-minded or creative for receiving what might come your way that might be completely different.
That's very beautiful, because it shows that it's not always about having a master plan. Sometimes that thing you do that really is just about peace of mind and stillness can be what opens that next door for you too. It's just that you're not being so strategic about it. It really is about evolving as a human and not thinking about the master plan.
Yeah. It's in that way something wonderful can come out of it. Now, it may not be easy on the way. It's not, especially these days, it's quite challenging if you work things and finances, and it's more complicated. And I guess right now, kind of on a daily basis for many folks, people who own businesses, for example, or working in pretty well any industry, we're being hit with something that's a huge challenge. So I don't want to minimize the angst and the suffering, if you want to use that word, that that can happen as we're going through these things. But I don't think there's I'm paraphrasing the existentialist philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who said we could put up with pretty well anything if we knew why we were doing it, which kind of means if we could only find meaning. And one of the people wrote in about that a couple of weeks ago. If you could only find some meaning in whatever it is you're going through, you'll probably be okay, or at least it'll help you along the way. It's when you don't have meaning, or you're not open to meaning coming to you, that it stays very, very difficult.
And it's true. It's why in retrospect it can be so easy, because if you're looking back on it, well, you can connect the dots. But in the moment of suffering, that can be the hardest place to find the purpose of why you're feeling the way you are and why you feel so lost at this, right?
Right. And it isn't, in my opinion, you shouldn't beat yourself up if you can't find meaning, because there's, as I say, it's kind of complicated that way. It comes to you, or you'll discover it, creating and discovering, like something like Viktor Frankl would probably say. It's being open and then hoping something will come your way. So you can't beat yourself up if that meaning is not coming and you're anxious over it and you need help with it or whatever.
Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
right.
A book we probably will talk about a lot on the show, and I'll take a moment because you mentioned that to mention your book. Gary's book is Pathways to Stillness, and you can find it online. It's at McGuire, Indigo Chapters as well, Amazon.
Yeah, Amazon.
We do a lot of exercises from this book on this show, but I've read the entire book before we started filming this show, and I found it to be just a really great tool for when you are living through. I mean, I think the times continue to be confusing. We've lived through the pandemic as a worldwide community, and now as we navigate a trade war, we don't always talk about what we're feeling individually and personally and how it's affecting us, but I found your book very helpful for me and what I was feeling at that time and continue to feel. So I hope that if people are following along at home, they also check out your book, because a lot of the exercises we're doing here are all in the book, and it's beautifully written, and you're great to talk to. And I'm sorry if I use this show as free therapy, but I do.
Yeah. The book is also available as an audiobook on iTunes, and in town, Sunbury Shores and Maguires. I very much enjoy our conversations as well.
What's when people approach you, what's a question you get a lot, especially in this day and age?
Well, in terms of when people ask me what my background is, and I say gerontologist, it's still a pretty new field, so a lot of people know about it, and some people say, "Oh, what's that about? We didn't learn that in high school or whatever." So I tell them it's about aging, and they say, "What's the answer?" That's what they often say. What's the answer? Or they want to know something about what they should do not to get old. They say, well, you may have difficulty trying not to become older. What was that quote that person said?
We wanted to talk about this on the show because this is a great quote. We're learning so much from the viewers at home, so please write us, continue to participate in the show. It's interactive, and that's what we love about it. But Melanie sent in this quote, and I love it. She said, "It feels strange to be the same age as old people." And I thought it was just beautifully encapsulated last week's exercise where, if you live your life a certain way, you don't necessarily feel the age that you actually are.
Right.
And I often feel that way too. Well, that person's as old as I am. Shocking. We've had another viewer write in JOMO. Instead of there's the fear of missing out, FOMO, but JOMO is the joy of missing out, which I love too. And really, I think that really feeds well into the practice of stillness. I can't believe we're getting close to the end of the show. We do end always with Tai Chi, but
right.
Before we get to that, what exercise are we doing for next week for everyone at home?
I'll just read it out. Think about experiences in your life that you can say that you survived. It may not be a big thing to others, but for you it may be a source of meaning and stillness. There's a strong connection between finding meaning and experience satisfaction or stillness at the quiet center kind of thing. For example, some participants in my guided autobiography course, which I have taught in past years at the university, start out by saying that they really do not have much of a life story to tell. Since they were just a housewife, for example, just a housewife. That is, until they look more closely. After reviewing their experiences, raising 4 children, schooling, illness, activities, managing a household, and being a wife to her husband, one participant said that she did not know how she did it. She said that although science tells us that we cannot do 2 things at once, mothers can indeed do this. By relaxing into stillness and gently exploring your journey, you may find much unique meaning, value, and stillness associated with that discovery.
Oh, I love that. A lot of this show, we are looking at our lives as a story, and honestly, how to be better at looking at our lives as a story. And we are also practicing stillness. So I love that we end the show with an exercise, a Tai Chi exercise. What are we doing today?
I think we should do the wave hands like a cloud again. Tai Chi moves have a lot of very kind of romantic, mythical terms that go with it. They're kind of neat to picture. So we start with the palms turned out. Relax your shoulders. Take a nice breath. Come up. Turn over. float back down, and before you lock your elbows, just cross your palms, turn them up, float up, and over and down. You're going to do that 3 times. A circle, palms up, float up, just like you're in a cloud. Down. And 3rd time. And the 4th time we take a nice breath. Okay. Yes, just try to remember, take a nice breath on the first one and the last one of the 4 of them.
That's my biggest struggle, is the breathing. Well, that was great, Gary. Appreciate this show so much. I went over to visit my parents last week and saw them both doing Tai Chi and watching your
wonderful.
show. That was a very neat experience. So I look forward to sitting down with you again next week.
So thank you, Vicki, and thank you for tuning in. Look forward to seeing you next time on Pathways to Stillness.